Welcome back to BatMan. We're going to be infiltrating Penguin's super big ship because he's here for some reason.
Penguin's boat.
When did Penguin become a pirate? I know Batman was Batman's become a pirate.
Well, I say at the same time Batman became a pirate.
You know, among his many totally legitimate, not crime businesses, he probably does run a torrenting service. It's all fine as long as you put a disclaimer up that says you must own this and this and that to legally download something.
Penguin and the not wanting to pay for for Downton Abbey. Okay. Do you have to take out all the snipers, or can you like get sneak past them?
Anyone who's orange, you have to take out.
You have to take out.
It's just easier to take the snipers out first because they're the ones who are going to shoot you.
It's a good thing these guys don't have peripheral vision, otherwise he would have seen it.
No.
It's funny because like the visual cones and stealth.
I call this one the Three Stooges.
The visual cones in stealth games are so narrow, it's actually like the enemies in these kind of games have a flat screen that they're seeing the world through. Kind of like you. They don't have the... You see, in the real world, you have round eyeballs. If you hold your hand up directly to the side of your face, you can see it at the edge of your vision. You have a pretty...
That's actually...
Yeah.
That's something that they have to do. They had to do back when, like, horse-drawn carriages were still a thing, is they had to put, like, literal blind... That's why the phrase, like, having blinders... Sorry, I bumped my mic. Having blinders on comes from, is because they literally had to put, like, black things near the horse's eyes on the edges so that their peripheral vision was cut off, and therefore they wouldn't get distracted and walk off the road.
Yeah.
But the real reason why enemies in stealth games don't have peripheral vision is because if they actually did, then the game would not be fun.
Well, they'd be able to see better than you. There are some games that try to compensate for this by like giving you a field of view setting that after a certain point gives the game a rounded sort of fisheye look. But I can't... Outer Worlds is one. But I can't play the games like that. It makes me nauseous. Like actually queasy in the stomach. So, yeah. It's a bit of a problem. It's kind of the reason I don't like first-person games much.
I mean, I guess that's like one of the things that VR, like, theoretically could do that you couldn't do in a normal game.
If they had curved monitors inside the headset, I suppose you could.
I know that, like, the super ultra high-end VR stuff.
Well, I mean, you don't even need VR for that. You just need a really expensive curved monitor that nobody ever buys because it's a really specialized object and makes everything else look really ugly.
I was tired of him waiting there.
Inconspicuous, Batman. Inconspicuous.
I was tired of him just standing there not doing anything.
World's most stealthy ninja, Batman.
I'm gonna go in as a stealthy bat.
No. I am vengeance. I am the knight. Believe it. But yeah.
Batman wearing a giant orange jumpsuit.
There's probably a costume recolor.
I mean, have you seen Azrael's Batman suit from After Nightfall? The big red garish thing.
Should I?
Just go to Google Images and search up Azrael Batman.
How do you spell Azrael?
Now you see,
Azrael.
if you had quickly jumped down the rail there, you probably would have gotten away without being seen.
That was me trying to do it normally, but he snapped to the rail.
You got caught with your pants down.
Oh my god, you guys were talking about like the 90s. This is the 90th thing I have seen in a long time.
Yeah, well, strap yourself in if you ever delve into that era of comic books, because things got really try-hard. Okay?
No, the 90s is like the darkest age.
Lewis, he'll get affected with Youngblood's disease if he does that.
I'm so glad that women have lost the ability to have their boobs and their butt be facing forward at the same time, because their poor spines. You know, there's no way.
Well,
if they had that much torque.
If they had the ability to do that, then their spines are fine. But since they don't, the fact that they keep drawing them like that on covers is concerning.
I know the weight that they have to hold is just that's not how the body works, guys. Okay. Look, you just have to come to the grips that there are ass people and there are boob people, and you can't always please them both on the same cover. All right, I'm sorry. I mean, you could also examine the systemic sexism and other forms of objectification that women go through, and maybe not make every woman character have to be a sex object, but that sounds too hard. So
Nah,
maybe
Power Girl needs a boob window.
maybe let's start off by lowering the amount of fetishism, and then make way from there. You know?
Power Girl is a funny case because, like, I'm not sure if I told this story during a commentary before, but the reason she is the way she is because the person drawing her comics at one point decided to play a funny on an editor who just wasn't paying attention, increasing her bust size by 1 cup every issue to see how long it would take to notice. The answer was 8 months, apparently. So,
Or maybe he did notice, said nothing, just so he can have bigger numbers.
Gradually increasing the chest size of Power Girl didn't stop until the editor noticed, and then at that point, they just kept it where it was for the rest of time, and that's where that happened. The actual boob window of the comic is kind of a funny thing, though, because Power Girl's comics and storytelling is kind of a mess. I don't know if you know this, but she's got like about 60 different retcons and rewrites and different universes behind her.
Well, I mean, that just sounds like every comic book, to be fair.
But she's especially egregious because it all happened in a very short period of time and in one timeline. So at one point, she was like alternate universe Supergirl, and then she wasn't. She was like the daughter of an Atlantean wizard or something. And then she went back to being alternate universe Supergirl after an arc in which she didn't know what her backstory was, and the writer of that particular comic arc decided to make fun of how stupid her story was by turning how stupid her story was into a plot arc in itself, in which she went temporarily crazy, and a supervillain who specialized in illusions messed with her head about it, and she fought an invisible person who wasn't there in the middle of a crowded street, and everyone looked at her like, "What the fuck are you doing? You just destroyed a truck." It was.
You know what?
You mean it wasn't Gentleman Ghost?
You know, this sounds eerily like the Clone Saga, and that's not a good thing.
It was it was really good. It was the start of the one Power Girl arc that was actually really fun to read, and then they ruined it with New 52. So.
I mean, I always liked the DCAU version for the one episode she was in.
Oh, where she was Galatea and wasn't Power Girl at all.
Basically.
Yeah.
Is there a basis for that? Like, I never understood Galatea.
They wanted to have a Power Girl reference in there, but it didn't bring in Power Girl because she's kind of maddeningly specific. It's kind of like how with Jessica Jones, they wanted to adapt the Kilgrave story, but the Kilgrave story was so wrapped up in X-Men shit that they couldn't use that they just made a bunch of shit up to fill in the blanks.
I mean, to their benefit, honestly.
Oh yeah, the Kilgrave story was dumb.
Yeah, you take that's honestly where I think a lot of where the MCU has shined is taking the bones of good ideas from not necessarily great comics and then just taking out all the stuff that's bad.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that they kind of needed Jean Grey for the original story to work, and the answer to the whole problem was that Jean Grey magically made Jessica Jones immune to Kilgrave, and yeah,
because Jean Grey can just do whatever the hell she wants.
Yeah, it was dumb.
This is, oh God, X-Men. I've said this on I was gonna call it the show, but I've said this.
I mean, it is a show, so.
I've said this on here a couple of times. I don't care for the X-Men. Like, I mean, which is weird because they're like half the Marvel universe, but that's also why I don't really like them, because they're effectively their own universe that's also stapled on to the Marvel universe. So it makes a lot of weird inconsistencies.
Yeah.
And there's the other problem that I generally have with them is that there's so many characters, so none of them, unless if your name is Wolverine or Jean Grey, none of them get to have interesting or complex characters or powers.
Unfortunately,
well, I mean, Cyclops gets to stay around for everyone.
Unfortunately,
but his character isn't interesting. He's just.
Nobody likes Scott.
Unfortunately, though, the very niggle that made them have to actually do a good version of the Kilgrave story also takes away quite a few good storylines that they could have adapted from the Jessica Jones comics. Like, the stuff she does that involves detective work in a really like religious rural town that has anti-mutant sentiment out its ass.
Oh, there's the hyphen.
Oh. Now they've added a hyphen to Batman.
He's not Bruce W. Batman. Also, hi, Electrocutioner.
Is this one of our 8 robot masters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a good thing I'm wearing a rubber suit, isn't it? Isn't it?
I can't say, are you ready to rumble, because that's copyrighted.
In this corner, weighing approximately 200 and something pounds, it's Bat-Man!
It's Batman.
So,
But you're talking right now.
So, like, is this guy supposed to be threatening?
And in this corner,
the loser!
a punk bitch.
All I'm getting is that lame-ass boss from the beginning of Remember Me, who you get the projectile weapon from. The projectile weapon, which is the most memorable thing in the game, simply because it is known as the Spammer.
Wait, was that the whole boss fight?
Yes.
What?
Yep.
Okay, that's a pretty funny joke.
Okay, yeah, you're right. This is the one permitted boss that isn't a boss, but is just a mook rush in the entire series. Because, you know, it's played for a joke.
I mean, also, this guy, from what I can tell, this guy's basically also just the Shocker, so...
Yeah. Executioner! I'll follow you to the ends of Gotham!
See, it doesn't matter how electrified your hands
No,
are.
Shocker would be inaccurate because Shocker is tremor-based, not electricity.
Yeah.
Shut up, John.
Dude, I had my fucking nuts in a vice when I asked that question in my Spider-Man review. It was like, what's the difference between Shocker and Electro? It's like Shocker's fucking...
Oh, I get it. Because, like, aftershocks and stuff.
Yeah. The problem is
Like,
that doesn't come across very well most of the time.
No, he's
No.
like, he shoots energy beams effectively. Like, I know that they are supposed to be, like, vibrations or something like that, but the way they're drawn and the way they
It's
basically act.
the same way you can't draw
Yeah,
Superman's
you know,
vision very well
I
in
only
comics.
know I only know Shocker from the '90s cartoon, and I thought he was electric for the longest goddamn time.
He basically was in that show.
Yeah, I thought so was too, because I thought I remember them saying that the suit he wears is insulated.
Yeah.
It's
It's supposed
he
to
doesn't
cushion
get-
him from the aftershocks.
Yeah, it's pillows,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Jesus
That's why
Christ.
Spider-Man calls him Quilt Man.
My favorite version of Shocker is the early Ultimate run, where he's basically like the worst villain in Spider-Man's
Quilt Man.
lineup.
I mean, he basically always is the worst villain.
Yeah,
So-
but there's actually like he gets beaten up at the beginning of like 6 different issues, and then there's actually a really good issue later on where he kidnaps Spider-Man, and he spends the entire time like talking about how he's a joke and how nobody takes him seriously anymore, and he can't get work as a criminal anymore because he's such a specific, like, Spider-Man specifically picks on him so much. So he's going to kill Spider-Man to, like, try to get his rep back or something like that. It's been a long time since I've read that issue. But it humanized him a lot, and it was the early Ultimate Spider-Man run was actually really good, which is weird because the rest of the Ultimate Universe
Is really bad.
really, really bad. It's like early Spider-Man and Miles Morales Spider-Man are pretty much the only redeemable
Well,
stuff
you know,
from the Ultimate Universe.
Depending on the creative team in charge, you're always going to get varying degrees of quality. That's why I said earlier that Power Girl's entire comic storyline was a mess, but there was this one-year period where it suddenly became really good.
That's one of my biggest issues with comic books as they are now. The creative teams change so much; it's hard to get a beat on.
It's because they need to
characters
have
and
a
stories.
new #1 issue every 2 years is the big problem.
It's like the only one I can think of that lasted a good long time was Scott Snyder on Batman.
Yeah.
How many
And it was-
issues did that go?
He was there since the start of New 52, so a good long while. It's only the
Well,
last couple of months that he's been on other
I
stuff.
think another part of the reason that happens is that creative teams don't necessarily want to stick with one thing for too long themselves either.
I get that, but at the same time, it happens so frequently. It feels like you're just never given a time for a character to breathe.
I feel it's rare
think-
that one writer will stick to one specific character for a long enough time to make a significant enough mythos.
Well, I think one of the things that really needs to be paid attention to is cohesion after after the storyline, after that creative team leaves. Like,
Well,
maybe
that's entirely an editor
maybe
thing.
assign a team to them that's, willing to play ball with the style that was just established. I mean, sometimes this sort of partially happens, like after that one good year of Power Girl. The creative team that took over sort of realized that that run of Power Girl was really good and tried to keep the good stuff going. The only problem was that they got brought into like 3 different ongoing DC Universe events that all didn't go anywhere because New 52 happened.
Big comic events also need to not happen like every 2 years as well. Because...
That was the other good thing about that one Power Girl run. It didn't get wrapped up in any events. It was just its own self-contained little season of Power Girl, the unanimated anime, and it was centralized around this plot involving Ultra Humanite and Satana. And there were some like episodic things that happened in the middle, and this one really funny story with Vartox that is the sole reason I don't like the first episodes of the Supergirl show, because it ruined Vartox forever by making him just not fun anymore. But
yeah, but I mean, if you have an event every year, it's not really eventful.
Yeah,
well, I'm going to go even a step further. I think that the characters within their book shouldn't cross over in continuity. Like, if you want to have, say, Batman show up in a Superman comic, that's fine. That Batman is not in any continuity with his own book.
Maybe.
I don't know if you necessarily need to go that far.
I guess I'm using the word continuity wrong. It's not important to what's going on.
Well,
with
yeah,
Batman.
like say it.
I agree with that.
I think that flies better in Elseworlds.
Well, it doesn't even have to be that complicated. Just say he's between story arcs or something.
And it doesn't matter.
Be a little vague about the timing, so it doesn't have to be specific about how it affects his storyline. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Like, Superman will occasionally appear in a Power Girl comic because, like, it's fucking Superman and she's his alternate universe cousin. It makes sense. But you don't necessarily need to know like what's going on at the same time in his comic series. Just have it be between events.
Be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to buy Punisher 122 in order to understand what's going to happen in the next issue of Daredevil.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to have Superman show up for a few issues and have a crossover with fucking Zatanna in which they fight magical dinosaurs for some reason. But restraint. And don't try to make it super important when a crossover does happen.
I also don't like it when the event feels like it's taking up the entire universe, because, for one thing, I feel like most people have not liked any of the events either company has done in a long time. Like, I know that
the last one I remember being generally well liked was like Blackest Night, and that was early 2000s.
Yeah, because like I know that like the past couple Marvel events people have really hated. Like, I mean, granted,
I don't think Marvel's had a generally good event since I've been alive.
Because I mean, I'm not as familiar with like the comics, because I mean they're expensive is the big thing, and I don't have the patience to read.
Buying 2 of these is enough to cover an entire streaming service for a month. That's not expensive at all.
Not to mention that if you want to even just buy trades, like you have to.
That's
wait.
also
I just realized
you're behind by 6 to 12 months.
I just realized I should clarify my argument there. It doesn't apply to like different superheroes who are like closely related within the fiction, like Batman and Batgirl. They can cross over as much as they want. It's kind of an expected thing.
Well, I mean in a general sense. Like, even if you wanted to have Hawkman and Green Lantern crossover for a small thing, you can. It's just, if it's happening in the Green Lantern book, it doesn't matter what's going on in the Hawkman book.
Yeah. The other thing, though, is that sometimes having close relationships between 2 different superhero characters can be interesting. Like, I'm going back to the same Power Girl arc. She has a really close and honestly very cute friendship with Terra, specifically Atlee. How many Terras have there been? Oh, God.
Can we not get into that?
Atlas
Are we
specifically.
talking about Final Fantasy VI?
It's a really no Terra as in the one who can manipulate the Earth. The girl who can manipulate Earth.
Teen Titans.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, so the Earthbender.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
got it.
Earthbender, basically. So it's a really cute friendship, and it's really important to that particular arc of the Power Girl comic, and she's a very prominent character who appears on almost every issue of that run, and it works really well. So stuff like that can work from time to time. I'm not saying never do it. Just do it when it makes sense and not when it doesn't.